Welcome to the Circuit of Success Podcast.
The Circuit of Success Podcast.
With your host,
Brett Gilliland. Brett Gilliland Visionite Advisors.
the Circuit of Success Podcast. Let's start the show.
Welcome to the Circuit of Success. I'm your host, Brett Gilliland. Today I've got Lasser Sorensen with me. Lasser, how you doing?
I'm good.
It's good to see you.
Yeah.
I was turned on to your story by David Sink, who then told Ryan Barkey, and you know how it goes, right? And then I read this amazing article about your restaurant in Desoto, Illinois. You've had it for 25 years.
26 years, yeah. So I started my career in California. I moved from Copenhagen, Denmark to California, and I lived in Los Angeles. And after 10 years out there, I decided I wanted to live in a different place with less people that I was used to from back home. So Southern Illinois actually reminded me somewhat of Denmark's rolling hills and small little farming communities.
Yeah.
So it was a good spot, and everybody told me there's no way you're gonna make it. People are not gonna appreciate it. All they eat is barbecue and catfish. And so I consider that it was a victory that I was there for that many years.
Yeah, heck yeah.
And all the people that were into meat and potatoes, I got them turned from well done to medium rare, and so it was a long course of training a lot of people in eating what I wanted them to eat. Yeah. But at the same time, I got a lot of friends and out of all these customers I met over the years. So this has been a wonderful 25 years.
So how did Southern Illinois even come up? Like when you're in California, people in California don't know much about Southern Illinois, obviously. So how does that even happen?
Well, so my wife's parents were in the military, and they lived all over the world, but they were originally from the Cabondale, Caudeville area.
Got it.
So when they retired in Caudeville.
Okay.
So, I was out here to visit Mary Jane's family. Mary Jane's my wife. And I went on a fishing trip on Crab Orchard Lake, and I love fishing. So I thought it was great, and I really got enamored with the area. And then we were out one night, and we drove by this old place, and Mary Jane's brother said, "Well, this place has been here since 1921. It's a cool place." And he says, "You want to stop by for a drink?" Yeah. So we went in there, and the owner was in there, and she was the only one that was in there. There was no servers, no nothing. The lights were dim. You can tell that they were in dire straits. And we got to talk, and she got a divorce, and she wanted to get out of it. So I'm like, okay. So I went back to California, and I said to my wife, "What do you think about opening a restaurant in Southern Illinois?" And she said, "Are you kidding me? I spent all these years to get out in the Midwest. That's the last place I want to live." So another 5 years went by, and I worked for corporate America, and ran 13 restaurants and had a corner office and a great job. And in today, actually, I was thinking if I would have kept that job, I would have been retired by now. But neither here nor there. I got bored because I love to do stuff with my hands, and I love to cook. So 5 years went by, and I came out here again, and the restaurant was still for sale, and we made them an offer, and they took it, and the rest is history. Yeah.
That's amazing. What a cool story. And so you grew up in Denmark, and I read somewhere your dad was the pastry chef for the royal family. Is that
yes.
right?
Mm-hmm.
My gosh. So tell us about that. What was growing up in Denmark like? What's made you the man you are today?
Well, I mean, as you get older, I'm 57 now, you start thinking back on some of the lucky things you have happened to you, as a kid growing up. And the lucky thing I have happened to me is I had the same mom and dad, and they were there the entire time when I was young. And they taught me, to be responsible. And I was never, I always thought it was strange, and I saw other kids getting stuff, and my parents were like, "No, you got to work for it, and then we'll give it to you." Mm-hmm. And I realized later on in life that all of those things were just super, super important. And that's why I could do what I've done, is because, my childhood was so good. And then, of course, being in a restaurant family, my siblings are in the restaurant family, so as soon as I could walk, I was washing dishes, and then I was helping my dad in in the kitchen, dipping cakes in chocolate and all that stuff. That's how I got my allowance. And then after school, then I had 2 or 3 hours. That was my job, so I could get money to do whatever I wanted to do. So it was a great upbringing, but it was a different time. Things were different. And my dad, he's passed away now. He was a great artist, meaning that for him, being a pastry chef was being an artist to express yourself. He would he made the biggest wedding cake in the world. It's in the Guinness Book of Record. Wow. And and then he made all the wedding cakes for the royal family, and always looking to do new and exciting things in his field. So it was a great what do you say? It was great for me to see somebody that was that devoted to his craft. But then on the other hand, if you wanted to talk to him about something else, there was nothing to talk about.
I know pastry.
Yeah, so my mom had to do that other side, but it was interesting. And I remember when I became an apprentice with him, he would say stuff, and I always thought, man, he's crazy. I mean, he's too hot. This is not going to work. Why does he say that? And when I got my first big job in California, and I had 50 people under me in the kitchen, I start saying the same stuff he said, and I'm like, wow, he was right. And he came over and visited me when I had Tom's place, and I sat him down one day, and I said, I apologize for not believing what you said, but it just took me 20 years to figure out why you said what you said. So it was. That's great. He was very happy to hear that too.
Oh, I'm sure. It takes us guys to wise up over the years. That I've had to have that conversation with my parents as well. So, how in the heck do you land a gig with the royal family? Do you know how that happened?
Well, I mean, so in those countries, you see like certain stores that would have the crown over their name, and that's because you're the best in the country at one specific craft. Okay. So all the different crafts, there is one of them that has that. Wow. Label. So.
And it was him.
Yeah.
Wow, good for him. Yeah. And so in 1989 is when you moved to America, and then, like you said, you came there. And so what have you learned over the years?
And I don't know if you know why I came to America.
I don't.
Well, because I was involved in a movie in Denmark called Babette's Feast, and they won an Academy Award as Best Foreign Picture in 1988. And it was a very interesting movie, and so the producers of the movie wanted to open a restaurant in La Cienega in Los Angeles and call it Babette's Feast. And so we were all geared up to all come over here, and I was over here before anybody else, and then the recession hit in 89, and they pulled the plug on it, and everybody went home, and I decided, well, I think I'm going to check this place out a little longer, and the rest is history. That's why I've been here so long.
So can we say you're an Academy Award winner?
No.
He's like, no.
Well, I mean, I had a hand in it.
I was in the movie.
I had a hand in it. And the funny story with that was, it was considered back then a low-budget movie. Yeah. And I think they made it for like $3 million. And the first year, they made $80 million. Oh. When you win an Academy Award, that's just a landslide of money. Yes. So I was young, and then they asked me, how do you want to get paid? Do you want to get a percentage of the movie, or you want to get paid? And obviously, I did not make the right choice on that one, because we were like, it's a good movie, but no, it's
not going anywhere.
So then I did another movie with the producer later on called A Girl in the Swing, where I actually was much more involved in the food than on Babette's Feast. And they asked me the same question, if I want a percentage, and I said yes to that, because I thought, okay, that's a good decision, and it flopped. So
0 for 2 in the movie making.
Yeah,
that's funny.
And so, but it's interesting. For me, it's like that was like the first time that I was involved in making, motion pictures, and here I am today with a show. So I kind of understand the whole thing about what you have to do in front of the camera. Yeah. And when you cook, especially, the food has to be done a certain way when it's for the camera and everything. So it's I guess all the little things have made me come to this point where I am today. So. Yeah. So
I think that's a little, what I hear there too is awareness, right? So I don't think that's by happenstance that these little things just happen to get you to where you are today. Master Chef, I did some, 8-day exam, 130 hours. In all areas of cooking, right? To be a master chef, which you are. And I think that when you put one foot in front of the other, I always say boringly consistent is probably what I would assume you've done over the years to get you to the level you're at. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, it never, I never thought of a job like how much money can I make, and what's the hours and all that. I always thought about everything I do in life has been about what can I learn from it. And not only cooking, but I've done a lot of things other than cooking, which I can't explain to you today how I got into that. I like 15 years ago, I started a construction company. And I started building houses. And it came from the fact that I was trying to get people to do work in the restaurant, and they did such a poor job. And I'm like, it's obvious you're going to have to do it like this. So then I started doing that, and I realized I was good at that too. And I kind of ran the construction company like a kitchen. Yeah. I wouldn't allow them to throw stuff. And, they all looked at me like I was crazy because I want everything clean all the time. And before you go home, you clean everything up, where that's not how they do it.
No.
So, but, I was successful at that, I think, because, I had a different mindset, and I wanted people to get, value and quality. And I never understood why people would overcharge. If you got really good at something, why would you charge an exorbitant amount of money for something? Because it's just not right. So that's kind of how I've been thinking, and same thing with food, really when people come to the restaurant, I'm like, I don't want to overcharge for anything. But then on the other hand, it's all about location. If you're in Clayton, you can charge a bunch of money. If you're in Desoto, Illinois, you can't. Right. So you got to be aware of all those little intricate things that you have to make decisions on every single day. Yeah.
So when you think about your career, you don't just become a master chef and stay there, right? And I think about the business world that I'm in, you're constantly having to work on your craft. So,
absolutely.
So how did you stay a student of your craft and keep going to that next level?
Well, so when I lived in Copenhagen, I was younger, I was very involved in competitions. And that, I have a competitive side. Yeah. And so I was at the World Championships for pastry chef, and my dad told me that I didn't train hard enough, so I wouldn't have a chance, and I won. So that was a wonderful feeling. And then I've been on the culinary Olympic team of Denmark a couple of times, and I saw that the more money the teams have, the better the chances you have of winning. So that's kind of how I got out of it, because I realized it was not about your skill level. I mean, if you had a huge sponsor behind you where you can train every day and do all that stuff, so it was unfair. So, but then there was other chefs like me that thought, well, that's not a good way to do a competition. It's better if we do like a mystery basket type thing, because then everybody's on the same playing field. So I after that whole thing, I kind of said, well, I need to just hone my skills somewhere else. But it was a good experience to learn, to do things faster and better and all that stuff on a competitive level. But it was just, prepping me for other things, I guess. And, the greatest thing was, I got to meet some very, very interesting people. I got to meet Paul Bocuse, and I say that today and nobody knows who he is. He was the most famous chef in the world up until recently. He passed away. And, he couldn't pronounce my name, Lasser. He always said I should open a restaurant called Laissez Faire, which means let it be. So I always wanted to open a restaurant called Laissez Faire. And when I came to Southern Illinois, my wife told me, if you change the name from Tom's Place to Laissez Faire, they're going to shoot shotguns through the window.
Anarchy over here.
So maybe it's still in the future. But anyway, he came over here, and lo and behold, he came and visited me. So that was a huge honor. And all the French chefs were very upset that he didn't go to just French chefs. But I had a good rapport with him, and it doesn't really mean a lot to a lot of people today, but for me, that was like meeting a culinary god. And it was just an amazing feeling that somebody actually remembered you and recognized you for your skill. So that was a
So walk through that if you can. So like, let's peel the onion layer back, because I'm assuming the guy didn't just call you and say, "Oh, you're the greatest in the world. I'm going to come over and see you in America," right? So how did that happen? Like, how does that transpire? And I'm thinking about the people that are listening to this right now, and maybe they're in sales or attorney, they're a financial advisor, whatever they're doing, but they're saying, "Okay, how do I build that deep relationship? How do I get that connection and then grow that relationship?" So how did that happen for you?
Well, I mean, I think first of all that you're devoted to your craft, and you're at a skill level that only a few will get to by hard work.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that they recognize that. And then obviously you can break it down differently, because other people, the Frenchman that didn't get him to come and visit them, they had another idea why he came to. It was a champagne brand that sponsored him. Well, lo and behold, the restaurant I was in, we bought more champagne than anybody else. So I'm sure that had something to do with it. And but I think that he recognized the fact that I went to Bocuse d'Or, which is a competition you have in France, and then he could remember, because we had a long conversation when I was down there. And one interesting thing, when I went to France and saw him, I remember Mitterrand was president, and there was like 3,000 people. Everybody was talking. The president walked in. Nobody cared. Then Paul Bocuse walked in. Everybody was silent. And then when he said bon appetit, everybody sat down and ate. So that's kind of like where the respect was back in the day. And then you realize you were in the presence of somebody who were big, right? Yeah. Because the president couldn't get anybody to shut up. But this guy, he had an incredible aura around him that...
Unbelievable. So what's been your biggest learning? As a lot of business owners listen to this, your biggest takeaways over the years, almost 26 years as a business owner, because I think there's a difference between being a chef and being a business owner, right? What have you learned over those years?
Well, I mean, so the big difference is, just like you said, when you're a business owner and a chef, then you have to make decisions differently as when you work for somebody else. When you work for somebody else, you want to just show your craft and skill or whatever, but all of a sudden, you're responsible for employees, taxes, and the well-being of the building you're in, everything. And it is an enormous task to be a small business owner, an enormous task. And you have to be fluid, constantly fluid, because every day something happens. Yeah, right. And so you can't have a frame of mind that everything's going to be the same all the time. I mean, over the 25 years that I've been there, things have changed, and I just constantly adapted. Yeah. And if they raised the taxes, you had to do something to offset the cost somewhere else, or new regulations. You constantly have to move, and if you're not interested in doing that, you're not going to make it. That's just how it is to be an entrepreneur. Yeah. And I think most entrepreneurs can agree with me that it's just that. I don't know. Some people call it a hustle, but I don't think it's really a hustle. It's just you have to acquire a skill set where you're good. You have to be good at not only your craft, but you have to be good at a lot of different things. Yeah. And a lot of chefs fail because they're not good businessmen, even though they're very, very well versed in making food. But that's not enough. Right. You have to, like what I understood when coming to Southern Illinois is that I can't be serving raw fish on all the plates going out, especially not the first 10 years, because my customers don't want that. Right. So I had to make some adaptions to that. But that wasn't really difficult. You just gotta have to find your groove where everything works. Yeah. And then even that changes too. People's opinion on what they should eat has changed dramatically in 25 years in the United States. So, and you have to constantly change everything about your business so it follows with the trends there is. And if not, you just get stagnant, and then people stop coming because you do the same thing over and over again. So
talk about that. I'm a big believer in your vision. You have to believe more in your vision than anybody else's doubt, right? So when you think about, I can't serve fish on my plate for the first 10 years, but yet here you are, this master chef. You have a grand vision. You have a different thoughts of what people should be eating than we probably normally do. So what role did that play? Where was how did you get people to kind of step outside of their comfort zone in Southern Illinois?
Well, so my vision for the restaurant never happened because I wanted the restaurant to be, the first Michelin star restaurant. Michelin star restaurant. I don't know if people really know that. There's a few restaurants like that, but there is a guide in Europe called the Michelin Guide, and they rate the best restaurants. In Europe, you will drive 5 or 6 hours to come to a restaurant just to experience the great cuisine. And I thought, well, I'm 2 hours from St. Louis, 5 hours from Chicago. If I try really hard and put my mind and heart to it, I can make them come. And I did, but given the economic environment in Southern Illinois, I wasn't able to, have the finest china and the best plates and glassware and, an abundance of servers. It was just not economically viable. Like that's what you see in Michelin star restaurants. I just could never get it there, but I really wanted to, and that was my vision for a long, long time. And then obviously there comes times in your tenure in a restaurant where you are in survival mode. Yeah. So sometimes, we had years where we were in survival mode, and then things got better again. But my vision has always been serving the people the best and the freshest ingredients, and then that's the key to success. Yep. And giving them great service, and I didn't care if you had overalls on or a suit and tie. I will treat everybody the same when they come to my restaurant. And I thought that Southern Illinois at times were a little bit of a culinary desert, so I wanted to be that little oasis, and that was my business plan, really.
That's it makes me think too. I'm thinking about the vision that may not have happened. Right? Is there more in the tank for you? Right? So if that was once the vision, does that vision totally change, or is that and you learn a new vision, or have you, or is there, like I said, there's still something left in the tank that says that Michelin star deal? I want that.
And, like if somebody came to me and said, hey, we're a group of millionaires, investors, and we want you to continue, and I could put all the money and effort into doing that, I would love to do that. Yeah. I mean, the place has everything that it takes to make that happen. It just needs an enormous influx of money. Right. And I would like to do that, but whether that's going to happen or not, I'm not sure. But I still have plenty left in the tank. I just got to figure out what what kind
of gas are we putting in the tank?
Yeah, right? And I mean, I'm really like this has been 5 days in, and I've spent. I had company from Denmark. My family was here from Denmark, so I've been cooking. And I love to cook, so a friend brought a bread machine, and I've been baking bread and stuff. I'm still that person that I have to have something to do. Off. Yeah, I'm going to have a hard time turning it off. So I'm hoping that I can use some of that energy for something really positive. And I love helping other people. Yeah. But the question becomes, can I make a living off of that? That's what I don't know. But, like I'm saying, I identify as an unemployed right now, I guess. So I'm just going to have to wait and see. I've gotten 6 job offers, so my ego is doing great. Right. But they all require me to move to big cities. Yeah. And, work in hotels or some big restaurants and stuff. And, I'm a little bit... I'm not really sure what I'm going to do yet, but
I think that says a lot about you, right? Yeah. A lot about your craft and what you've done. And quite frankly, I think as a human being, I thought there's no way in heck after the last couple of weeks you've had, the number of hours, the work that you've put in, the emotion you've put in. Yeah. When I said, hey, show up July 6th and let's do this podcast, and you're like, yep, I'll be there. I'm like, there's no way in hell this guy's coming, right?
It has been a very, very tumultuous couple of weeks, and my wife's been trying to talk me out of closing the restaurant because she was thinking that it's a failure, and I'm like, what do you mean? We're closing on our terms, and we've been there for 25 years. It just means that, I don't want to leave the place where I'm going to start doing stuff I don't want to do. Yeah. To accommodate a different generation, casual dining and all that. I'm not knocking any of it. I'm just saying that with my skills and my craft, you know, if I have to step into a new position, it has to be something that excites me.
Yeah.
You know, where I can say, wow, now I maybe be able to do some stuff that I weren't able to do in Illinois or in DeSoto, Illinois. And so we just kind of have to wait and see what happens.
We'll wait and see. We'll be watching. Talk about the belief in self. How important is that for being great at your craft? Belief in self, and then if it's important, which I believe it is, how do you improve on that?
When you know the one thing I think is very important is your mindset, and I've always had a positive outlook on stuff, and that's the most important thing. But what do you have to do to have a positive outlook on everything, right? You have to be in good health. You have to, know that, you cannot change other people. I mean, you can only change what's within an arm's length. So there are certain things you have to think about as you're embarking on whatever business adventure you're in. But the mindset of being positive, I think, leads to the same mindset that makes you successful. Because if you're not positive, if everything is negative, if you see everything as a strike against you, then you're going to have a hard time. So when I'm dealing with people that don't want to have an education and they are not interested in bettering themselves, I'm thinking to myself, well, that's opportunity for me, because I want to do it and I think I can do it. Of course I can do it. So you really have to just be very, very positive. And, really money is really not that important. Like as you grow older, you realize that, being in good health is more important, and being happy is more important than making a bunch of money. Right. So for me, it's never been about the money. I just wanted to be able to provide for my family, and then, drink some good wine and constantly cook some good food for everybody and make people happy.
Everybody's happy.
Yeah.
It's funny. So I've been in the wealth management business for 22 years. It's all I've ever done, right? So I'm around money every day. I talk money every day. And it's funny when you say your health and all that is I compare your health and your wealth together, right? Because if you only focus on your health and never focus on any money, well, your health's probably going to go away because you're super stressed when you're old and you can't work and do all those things, right? And then vice versa. If I only focus on wealth and I don't focus on my health, well, guess what? Your wealth's going to go down because now you're spending all this money, you're spending all your health, so you're spending your money on your health, right? And so I think that's important to know, and that's why I do the podcast. Even though we're not talking finances here today, it's help people achieve a future greater than their past. We can learn from you. We can take away things from you and take away your 30 plus years of being in this, master chef level. What does it mean to you when you hear the words a future greater than your past?
What it means everything in the situation I am in right now, right?
Yeah.
That's I'm gonna harvest everything I can of the knowledge I've used in the past to create a better future for me now. But I also, all the things you just talked about right now is going to become really important to me because, for the first many years, I didn't think about retirement, and I thought the restaurant would be my retirement. Well, now I'm sitting on a piece of property. When I'm not there, it's not worth anything. Right. So how am I going to make up for all of those things? And that's the task for me now, is to figure out, well, how I'm going to get out of this and then still be able to do what I love to do. So I think if I could do it all over, I would probably have talked to a wealth advisor in the beginning, because then I would have had a retirement plan and all that stuff. There was always been the idea, of course, somebody else is going to come along and buy the restaurant for an exorbitant amount of money, and then I'm going to just retire.
That's right.
Well, that's just not what happened. Yeah. So, and many years, I've had a lot of people in the finance business. Every time they had, meetings and stuff in Cabondale, so they all told me the same thing. Like, what are you doing for retirement, all that stuff? Do you have a 401k and all? Like, no. Right. So it is super, super important. Yeah. And but on the other hand, I also see people that work themselves to death and they retire, and then they're sick for a couple of years.
Yep.
And then they're done.
That's right.
They're gone. And I don't want to be that person either. So, if you're really smart, you think about that early in life, and I always said to myself, I want to retire at 50.
Yeah.
Well, now I'm 57, and it's not looking good. but and when I say retire, it's not like I ever want to retire. I always want to do stuff, but it'd be nice to, not having that financial stress over you all the time.
Absolutely.
And I think, any restaurateur actually has financial stress just because that's just part of the job.
Part of the deal.
Yeah. But it's important to, interact with people that understand, and that's with all the skills. You always have to be open to new things and realize that, you got to listen to people that are good at what they're doing.
Yep.
And then ask for advice. That's very, very important. And you shouldn't be afraid of asking for advice. You should be humbled by the fact that somebody are able to give you good advice.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's so key. I don't want to just go right past that. I mean, getting advice is huge. I mean, I remember still to this day, I'm trying to learn from you today, right? I think we have to be humble enough to say, I don't know the answer to everything.
Yeah.
But there's somebody that's been doing something that you want to do for 30 and 40 years. Let's go steal their knowledge. I always say steal shamelessly, right?
Yeah.
Take that one idea away from you, apply it to your life, be humble enough to go out and do it, right? So what I want to turn the page to now is, and it's on your shirt there, food is love.
Yeah.
So food is love. This is a passion project for you. Tell us about that. 5 times Emmy nominated.
Yeah, I mean, I would say I probably spent 25% of my efforts on Food is Love, and it kind of fell into. I was invited out to a show in California, and I was on a big show out there, and somebody in the Midwest saw me and thought, well, he would be a great person to portray the food scene in St. Louis. And he called me, and I said, no, I'm not interested. I mean, the last thing I need is any more work, right? It sounded like a lot of work. And he was very, very persistent, and then we finally came to the agreement. The show that he wanted, I didn't want to do that. And he said, well, what's it going to take? And I said, well, if I'm doing a show, I want to do a show that, I'm a chef. I don't watch cooking shows. And I hate to see cooking shows where, a lot of them are made up. Yeah. And then but people want to see aggression in the cuisine, in the kitchen, and people throwing stuff at each other and yelling at each other. I mean, it's so far from reality for me that I'm not interested in anything like that. So my show, and I'm blessed that PBS gave me the opportunity. My show is about breaking down barriers for people that, for instance, this is a good example. Korean cuisine was my first restaurant that I did, and when people talk about Korean cuisine, they go, "Ooh, that kimchi is terrible," and I was unfamiliar with it too, and just hearing other people talking about kimchi, I'm like, yeah, that must be terrible, right? And so I met a wonderful person, a Korean chef that are in St. Louis, and he was the pilot program, if you will. And the amount of things that I learned from one person following him for 3 days, I mean, that was really, it opened my eyes, and I thought to myself, I'm doing something right here, because if I'm a master chef and I thought I knew everything about cooking, I know nothing about cooking, maybe a little bit. Right. But all these different immigrants that comes into this country, and a lot of them are engineers and doctors and stuff, but they can't work like that. Their work ethic is just like mine. They have an incredible work ethic. Right. And their kids are brought up where they have to work in the restaurant after school. And I mean, it is so in touch with what I think working in a restaurant should be. But when you taste the food of a different country, it just takes you somewhere. It inspires you. It uplifts you. And you want to, not only do you want to try kimchi and you want to try Korean cuisine, you might even want to try to go to that country after you see it. So the food is kind of like and that's why I call it Food is Love, is because once you put something in your mouth and it's fantastic, in my opinion, your heart opens up, and you can talk to people that you normally wouldn't talk to because you start talking about the food, and then the conversation can go in another direction, but all of a sudden you have something in common. Where today, you know, we are so opposite on everything. So
Right.
I was so tired of that whole dynamic of being opposites. I thought to myself, we need something that brings us together. So that's really the basis for the show, is to inspire and uplift communities through food. And I think we've done a really, really good job. Like you said, we got 5 Emmy nominations, and I spent as much time on it as I could, but now I have different ideas and I want to try some new things on the show. And I think that nothing has changed in the philosophy of the show, but I think by me spending more time on it now, I think some of the things that I want to do, I have time to do now. So I'm going to definitely make time for that.
So that thing will be growing. We'll be seeing
Yeah.
more of that at a high level, which is awesome. What advice? So you said you're 57. What advice would you give the 37-year-old you?
Talk to a financial advisor.
I promise I didn't ask you, tell him to say that.
No, I know, but really, I mean, and you know, I think I could have been, you know, in a much better situation today if I had done that. I mean, I think when you're in the height of your career, you don't think about those things, but I think you really need to lay a good foundation for the future. I think that that's very important. And then I think also that you need to set yourself some goals on when you stop. And I think that that you know, that's something that I've learned after COVID. I put a plan in place after COVID where I said to myself, okay, if it gets to this point, then, you know, my tenure is gonna stop. And it's important to recognize the signs and be aware of okay, well, now it's time to go on to the next chapter. And then, you know, I think I also would tell my 37-year-old self is it's not about getting as many cars as you want, as many boats and RVs and houses, and everything has to be big, 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 because that has a tremendous impact on your future too.
Yeah.
I mean, I've wasted, I'm a big Jimmy Buffett fan. He has this song, you know, I made more money that I could buy in Miami, but I pissed it all away. So I did some bad things. You know, I bought a bunch of stuff, and I realized, you know, you end up paying taxes and insurance and all that stuff, and it just milks you dry. So a lot of those bad decisions I probably shouldn't have done. But also, you got to remember, when you're in the height of your career, you want to have fun.
Yeah.
So there is also the fun factor in there. So you got to recognize that, well, you did all that because you had fun doing it, and every single thing you purchased was a victory or a milestone in your success that you could do that. But, you know, I would say to my 37-year-old self, yeah, you know, you probably should have pumped the brakes a little earlier.
Yeah.
But I've had such a wonderful time, and, you know, like America for me, from being Danish, I mean, I could never have done what I've done here. So I've lived the American dream. I really have. I mean, and I think that's why I can sit here and say that, you know, now I want a smaller house. I don't want to mow 10 acres.
Yeah.
And I want something that requires no maintenance. I want to come home, you know, cook a good stew, you know, and then sit out on the back porch with a glass of wine and just say, you know, I'm happy.
We're doing it.
Yeah.
We're doing it. Would you say thinking is a big part of your deal? You think a lot?
Thinking?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think as an entrepreneur, you know, you think all the time, and I think that's how you make it. I mean, that's the hardest part physically of being an entrepreneur, is that you can't stop thinking.
Yeah.
You're constantly, you know, I solve all my problems when I'm trying to sleep. Yeah. And unfortunately, I wish there was a way around that, but it's because, you know, I have the peace around me, and you're saying, okay, tomorrow this is happening. How do I prevent that from happening, and all that stuff? You're thinking about all those things. So you got to have a pen and paper next to you so you don't forget it the next day. But, you know, I've come up with some brilliant ideas, like in the wee hours. Yeah. and thinking is what makes you going, and you adapt to whatever they throw at you.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird question, right? To say, do you think? I mean, of course we all think, but I think, or you keep saying the word think a lot. I believe that most people
think, therefore I am.
Think, therefore I am, which is a great quote. But I believe that most people don't slow down enough to think. Right? It was weird. I got to do this. I got to do that. I got this email. I got this meeting. I am a big believer. I've been saying it for years. Strategic think time. Slow down to speed up. Put an hour and a half on your calendar. I have it on my calendar every week. Hour and a half. I do nothing but this black journal, an ink pen, and me. That's it. Right? And I think. Right? Purposeful time thinking. And that's why I asked the question, because for me, it seemed like you are a thinker without knowing you really well. That I think that you do that.
And I think that, like you say, it's very important. So what I do is I get up in the morning before my 3 dogs and my wife, and I read the news. But lately, I've thought, that I'm wasting so much time looking at Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and what other people say about the restaurant and what I do and the show and all that. I'm thinking to myself, and now I watch this thing on my phone that tells you how much time you spend on your device, and it's scary.
It is scary.
It is so scary because, like you said, what if I was productive? And I mean, you really don't need to look at your phone 4 hours a day. It's an absolute waste.
Right.
But most of us do, because it's becoming the most important tool we have.
Yeah.
But it takes away from the thinking process that you used to do. It takes away from the interacting you do with other people. And then, I hate when people come to my restaurant, 4 people, they sit down, and then they're all on their phones, and they're not talking to each other.
No phone rule.
Yeah, so, but there's a lot of things that you can't change, and this is one of the things that I know. I told my staff 5 years ago that they were not allowed to have any cell phones. And I was losing staff, so then I had to change the rule where they can have a cell phone.
Right.
Because they had all these reasons why they had to have the cell phone. And so there was just nothing you can do. You just completely lost control over that. But really, I mean, you can look at your phone at your break, but everybody's so used to that instant thing, they have to have it. And I'm to blame myself too, everybody is a food critic now on Instagram and Facebook. So you gotta every morning look, well, of all the people that was in the restaurant yesterday, are they writing anything nice? Are they writing anything bad? And you just never know.
This is a shameless plug, but this is the future greater, achieving a future greater than your past journal. I created this. It's now on Amazon. And for me, everything you're saying is exactly why I believe in pen and paper, right? The journaling, the strategic think time. I use this Focus 90. This is a 90-day deal. So I just started, July, August, September. These 90 days in here. What are my goals? What are my Focus 90? Because to your point, we can start every morning and then all of a sudden there's an hour wasted, right?
Yeah.
What the hell just happened, right? So Focus 90 is for the next 90 days, how can I spend the first 90 minutes of every day focus on these 3 or 4 or 5 things?
Yeah.
It may just be, hey, I want to do 50 push-ups a day, right? Get up and do 50 push-ups. It may be I need to read 10 pages. It may be I need to make a call to my loved one or whoever and just tell them I'm thinking about them, things like that. And so that's why I think it's so important for us to think, journal, write down, dream, and good things can happen, because you're right. These phones are disastrous and can take advantage of our own time. We just let it happen. So tell us again, Food is Love. Where can listeners find more of that and find more of you?
Well, so Food is Love has now morphed into we have our own YouTube channel called Food is Love TV. And I'm actually doing an exciting project for the first time outside of PBS. I'm shooting a show outside of PBS. And it was a gentleman that came to the restaurant, and, he said, well, why don't you do an episode about Denmark or Danish food? And I'm like, well, I haven't raised any money for it, and, I've never really thought about that, but it's a really good idea. I would love to do it. And he said, well, I'll fund it. So that's a great opportunity, because now what we're going to do is we're going to try to create an episode where I get to do and say whatever I want to do. So it's going to be a little different.
Yeah.
And I'm still not sure what we're going to call it. But so the show on PBS is Food is Love, and I'm thinking about, first I wanted to call it Food is Love Unhinged because I was unhinged, but I thought, no, that's little too drastic. So now I'm thinking Food is Love Stories. So that's I kind of like that because obviously my show has been a love letter to St. Louis, and now I got to write a love letter about my own country, and the food I had when I grew up, and so I'm going back in August and I'm shooting a show, and it's in a collaboration with a producer over there that I actually knew from 40 years ago. We hadn't seen each other for 40 years, and it just happened. And I'm like, we know each other. And he said, yeah, he said, I tried to teach you how to play a electric bass when in high school. And I'm like, really? And I was a chef apprentice at the same time. And he said, he said, after a few weeks, I remember thinking to myself, I should tell this man, stick to the cooking. This music stuff is not for you. And but so here we are, 40 years later. We meet in Copenhagen. We talk about this program, and I'm now interacting with some people in my past. So I'm really looking forward to this. It's going to be an unusual thing for us to do something outside of what we've been doing. So what I want to do is create an atmosphere on Food is Love TV where you can not only see the shows there is on PBS, but you can also see some of these hand-picked episodes that I've decided I'm going to do, and I'm working on a couple of other ones. And now we're going to try to see if we can go out and find funding for some of these other things. But at least we'll have this episode to tell people, see, this is what the show could look like if we did it in your city or your country. So
that's great.
Yeah,
I love it. And where do we find more of you on social media, website, anything like that?
Well, foodislove.tv is our website. And, now when we have time to think about it, I'm going to put up a donate button because it's very important to get donations for Food is Love. So I hope the people would think of that. And I'm planning a couple of fundraisers. And Tony Piatoso from Cafe Napoli, he is a great supporter of the show. He was on my show, episode 1, season 2. And he opened another restaurant called Napoli Sea. And on August 14th, we're going to have 100 tickets out there. It's $250 a person. And he's going to create a huge menu. And, the proceeds go to Food is Love. So that'll be the first of many. And then we have planned, I'm actually planning on doing one in Alton, Illinois at State Street Market, which is the people that own that are originally from Cabondale, so we know each other from there, and we're going to do a fundraiser in Alton, but those details are not settled yet. But just follow me on Facebook, follow foodislove.tv on Instagram. I have Instagram, I'm Chef Lasser. And all of that stuff is going to come out. Awesome. We have some great things planned that we want to do, and really it's so important that we teach the new generation. I think the importance of sitting down, dining together, and sharing not only food but wine and atmosphere, because that's love, and that's the most important thing, right?
That's right. Need more of it.
We need more of it, yeah.
So last question, this is from our friend Abby over here. Your favorite thing to cook? If you could only cook one thing, what would it be? So
in my tenure in Los Angeles, I worked at a Hawaiian restaurant, and I have this fish that I'm obsessed with. And I think as a foreigner or an immigrant coming into United States, and then I always wanted to go to Hawaii. So all the names of the fish in Hawaii excites me. So my favorite fish is opakapaka.
Okay.
And I created this dish with opakapaka. It has like stewed leeks and sesame seeds, and it has an aniseed beurre blanc. I love licorice. Licorice is in aniseed. And so that's my favorite thing to cook. But being in the location I'm in here, I have not been able to cook it very often. So One of my ideas for a show I have, if I can find the funding, is going to Hawaii, because there's also a lot of stuff in Hawaii that intrigues me, and I'm very familiar with Hawaiian food, even though I haven't been there. So that's on my bucket list of shows, and if I can get over there and cook some opaka paka, that'd be great.
I bet Abby could show up and be there at the same time, and you'll at least have one person at the deal, right? We're gonna have a ton of people, but Abby's gonna be there and have some of that. Well, it's been awesome having you, Chef, and thanks so much for being with us.
It
on the
was a
Circuit
pleasure.
Success.
It was a pleasure. Thank you. There we go.
Love it.